That's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of PVA Radio. I am one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me, as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellocline. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I am doing great. And also, he's wearing shorts because it's not that cold outside. Larry Hunt.
It's a valid assessment. It's like 38 today.
Larry is that guy who wears shorts when you can see your breath outside, and when you're like, "What are you doing in shorts?" He's like, "Dude, I'm from West Virginia. It is not that cold outside."
I grew up on top of a mountain where sometimes it snowed at my house, but not down at the main roads.
With cargo shorts, no less.
Mm-hmm.
Not just any shorts, cargo shorts. Because
look, I don't care about fashion. I care about utility. And where else am I going to keep my hacky sack if I'm not wearing cargo shorts?
Oh gosh,
Killing it.
Well, right here at the top, let me say I am glad to be back. Last week we had a mishap with our Christmas tree. It fell. Literally, I was pulling up Google Hangouts to copy the link for you guys to join, and I heard a loud boom, and our tree had fallen, and it was a rough night, a very frustrating night, and you guys rose to the occasion, carried the show, and did a great job. So I greatly appreciate that. Larry, you mentioned this was your second time hosting the podcast.
Yeah. Well, after I thought about it, I didn't host the Player 3 podcast ever. What I was remembering was one time you and I started another podcast for another thing, but we actually never released that in any capacity.
Oh, okay. I was trying to think back to a Player 3 podcast that I had missed, and I didn't think I had missed any of them because generally it was at my house.
Yeah. I just remembered being in your basement hosting a podcast, and I've got the memory of an 80-year-old.
Well, you did it like a pro, and
well, thanks.
Now I know that I can fake some sort of tragedy again when I just want to get out of the show.
Oh, yeah, my Christmas tree fell. He doesn't even have a Christmas tree.
As I was listening to the podcast, I was like, I want to pause it and give my thoughts on this topic as well.
And he did, but no one was around to hear.
Yeah. I just looked really, really crazy driving around talking to myself. So this is PVA Radio. We get together every week. Each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of that week, and then we have an in-depth discussion about it. It's like a collaborative audio feature article, a CAFA. Get that tattooed somewhere on your body. Also, Larry remembered that last week, too. He remembered stuff that's not in the top and bottom of these notes, but yet had questions about things that are in the notes.
Wait, is that stuff in the notes? It really is. Huh.
It really is.
What do you know?
So, anyway, you can find us on podcast services everywhere with new episodes posted every Tuesday. You can find us on YouTube as well. Just search YouTube. Just search PVA Radio. We'll pop right up. And then if you want to be a part of the show, you can submit a question over at playerversusall.com/PVAQ. A little bit of housekeeping for you. We will be streaming episodes soon. You can follow us twitch.tv/PVA Radio. Larry hasn't been streaming any Fallout. Have you played a lot of Fallout lately?
I haven't played it since the frustrating news, but it's not because of the frustrating news. It's just I work at a church, and the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas is really insane in the church, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
And I haven't had time to play games very much.
All right. Well, hopefully you can hop back there. I want to hop on and start streaming some Overwatch 2. Not Overwatch 2. That's not a leak or anything. If Overwatch 2 was a thing,
scoop?
you'd hear it first from freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellocline. We call him the Civ, just leaking stuff everywhere.
Yeah, spreading fake news everywhere.
Anyway, yeah, go drop a follow on twitch.tv/PVA Radio. We should be up and live streaming some episodes here, hopefully in the next few weeks. So. Also, our schedule is going to be a little different. Holiday season's coming up, and we've been trying to make it a point not to miss the week, but Christmas Eve is on a Monday, Christmas is on a Tuesday, so we will not be getting together that week to record a show. So just be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for something to not be in your podcast feed that week. All right, guys. Enough of me talking. Let's get into it. What have you been playing, Cody? We're going to start with you because I feel like right now we're playing. There are too many games, but this isn't one of them when I look at your list.
Come on. So Red Dead and I need to take a break from Red Dead. Not because
Did you just call it Red? Did you just say Red and I need to take a break like you're on first name basis with Red Dead Redemption and Redemption is its last name?
Are you not?
No, I'm not. I'm only on chapter 3.
All right. Well, I guess you're just a side hoe for Red Dead, whatever.
Red Dead is my side hoe. Overwatch is my main chick.
Very much so. But yeah, I'm taking a break from Red. Not because of anything to do with my feelings about the game. Like I'm still loving it, but it has gotten to the point in the story where I'm actually getting anxious. Mm-hmm. It's the first time that I talked last week about the difference between predictable and inevitable. And right now the story in Red Dead is a ticking time bomb. For me, at least at the point where I'm edging towards the end of chapter 6, I think. And so I just see things falling into place and things falling apart, and I just can't. I can't. My soul can't take it at this point right now. So I took a break from it, and I dove into 2 new games that had been on my list for a long time, but I just never got the chance to pick them up. So one of them is Thronebreaker, which does sound like a bullshit game title, I'll admit. But it's actually a kind of like takes place in the Witcher universe. It's a game CD Projekt Red made recently. It's essentially an RPG, but the combat is all performed through Gwent, a slightly modified version of Gwent that you play in the actual standalone Gwent game. It's not very difficult. I bought it because it is essentially a fully fleshed out Witcher story, not with Geralt as the main character, an entirely new character, an entirely new story. And I just love that world so much that I love diving back into it. The Gwent part isn't that difficult, and I would say anyone who's a fan of The Witcher should, if they like that world and that story, certainly dive into it. There are choices you make that affect the outcome of the story. The characters are great, the writing is great, the performances are great. So I'm really liking that. I think a lot of people slept on it, probably because it's a card game. But I think it actually has a really cool story to tell. And then the other game I'm playing is a lot of people have been talking about this. It's been picking up a lot of award heat. It's called The Return of the Obra Dinn. It's by the guy who made Papers, Please, if you remember that game. And it is a adventure game where you play as an insurance agent aboard the Obra Dinn, which is a ship that was missing and returns to port, and everybody's dead, and you have to figure out what happened, piecing together clues based on information that you have and information you don't have. So you identify bodies, you piece together who that person is through other clues, and you kind of walk around the ship. There's a cool mechanic where you'll walk up to a body and you have this magical watch, and it kind of rewinds time to unfold the scene in front of your eyes, and you can pick up information through those scenes. It's really, really well designed, and it's a really compelling gameplay, and the mystery is engrossing as well. So I'm loving it. It's also the art style is like a really good looking game from like the early Microsoft computer days. It's like all black and white and kind of shaded that way. It's a really gorgeous looking game. But I'm enjoying both of those. Those are both kind of smaller games that I picked up recently.
I have questions.
Yes.
You were an insurance adjuster riding on the ship, or the ship rides in and you are an insurance salesman coming to the ship? I was confused there.
Yeah, so the ship kind of comes into port.
Okay.
It just kind of breezes into port, and you're an insurance agent kind of checking it out for the company that owned the boat. I think I'm pretty sure it's the East India Trading Company, so this takes place in like the 1800s.
So you're like, please let everyone be dead so we don't owe anybody any money.
Yeah. Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. So you are a ship who is also an insurance salesman.
Exactly.
All right, I think I'm tracking. I'm tracking.
Yes.
All right, Larry, what have you been playing?
I think I've played Overwatch this week, and that's about it. I like Overwatch. I'm real excited for these Brigitte nerfs because I think they're going to open up the. I don't know. I think it's going to fix a lot of issues with the nonstop stuns meta, but not all of them. I want to play some Tracer. I miss playing Tracer, and when you got lots of stuns and lots of armor, Tracer's not a good pick. So. I hope these changes will help a little bit. And I know this isn't a what I've been playing, but can I recommend a podcast to you fine gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend or Wants a Friend. I'm sure if you search Conan O'Brien, you'll find it because it's his only podcast, but it's freaking hysterical. The first episode, he interviews Will Ferrell, and I just died laughing for a straight hour. It's fantastic.
I'm not a huge Conan fan, so it'll probably be a pass for me.
But are you a Will Ferrell fan?
I do like Will Ferrell, just not a huge Conan O'Brien fan.
Well, listen to the one episode at least.
All right, I'll try to give it a shot for you.
Thanks.
All right. So I jumped back into Red Dead yesterday. We got snowed into at the house. We got about 12 inches of snow here at my home.
Damn.
So I thought it was a good opportunity because I didn't want to just keep losing SR on Overwatch to hop on and play some Red Dead. And I'm into chapter 3, and I'm starting to grow fond of a lot of the characters and of Arthur Morgan. I had a mission where me, Dutch, and Hosea just went out fishing.
Yeah.
And I stayed there obnoxiously long while they just told stories back and forth. And it was just a cool moment of like, how much is here? And I didn't even reach really the end of the dialogue until I was like, okay, well, I want to go do something else now. And so what you're saying about like predictable versus inevitable and that whole idea of like, I mean, it's a spaghetti Western. There's a bunch of characters in this game who are not in the first Red Dead, which is, it takes place after this. And you do know that it's like falling in love with your foster animal that you're adopting from the shelter. Like, I will love you for this time, knowing that the end is nigh. And so I'm going to stick with I'm sticking with it, and I'm loving it more. I still have some issues with some of the gameplay elements, but I think the storytelling, the world building, the characters cover over a multitude of sins in that regard for me. So it's got its hooks in me to the point where I kind of want to play it more than I want to play Overwatch at this point.
Yes.
That being said, though, did play quite a bit of Overwatch. Larry, I too am excited about the Brigitte nerfs. I think especially at our level, I watch a lot of pro Overwatch, and like I've been watching a ton of Overwatch contenders because right now it's just on around the clock because all groups and regions are going right now. I don't think it's going to change much like at the pro level because I think the Brigitte stuff, they're just going to seek out better targets. But I think one of the reasons Brigitte is so powerful at our level is just because it doesn't take a lot of game sense to play her. You just swing, and if you hit stuff, you get health, and when Bash is off cooldown, you can use it. So I'm excited from my personal like playing standpoint of how it's going to change the game. But as somebody who watches a lot of professional, I just still think GOATS is going to dominate. And even though like I understand at a high level how technical and it is to play GOATS, it's just not very fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of particle effects and ult fights, and it's not very fun. I'm hoping that we get some major changes coming through before Overwatch League in February, but my hopes are not that high right now. Jeff Kaplan apparently put out a statement that was like, here's what we're working on. And then it was basically just, we're working on a bunch of top secret stuff that we can't tell you right now.
Ooh, mysterious.
Yeah. So, all right, Larry,
What?
you dropped a follow-up in here for us. You want to lay that on us?
Yeah, so I didn't want to talk about Fallout again this week, but I think the story needs updating at least. So, very quickly, if you've been under a rock, you've been in a coma, you just woke up in a hospital surrounded by zombies, and you want to know what's been going on with Fallout. Quick timeline: the game released. It's not a great game. Lots of issues. And after all that controversy, there was a $200 Power Armor edition that was supposed to come with a canvas bag, but the people who got the edition got a cheap nylon bag instead. And Bethesda's actual response to one person was, "Sorry, you're not happy. Bag shown was a prototype and too expensive to make. Not planning to do anything about it." And then Fallout said that wasn't the proper response, and they gave a more verbose version of, "Sorry, you're not happy. Backshun was a prototype too expensive to make. Not planning to do anything about it." And then it came out that they had actually given canvas bags to influencers for free. So that piled onto it. After everyone got mad, they gave people $5 worth of in-game currency, which was just salt in the wound, and everyone got even more mad. And then they finally said, "Hey, we're going to try to manufacture we got plans to manufacture the canvas bags and replace them for all you people who got screwed over, and we promise that we're going to be more transparent moving forward." One article I drew heavily on to talk about last week was Luke Plunkett's article from Kotaku, which ended with, "I can't believe this bag is such a mess that I've had to write 2 stories about a plastic bag."
Nylon.
And so, nylon.
A nylon
yes.
bag.
Nylon bag. So after promises to be more transparent, Bethesda really leaned into that transparency thing. And if you filed a support ticket to claim your canvas bag, they gave you access to everybody's support tickets. So huge screw up, lots of privacy violation. Everyone's mad again, and rightfully so.
Did that happen after last week's episode?
Yes, it did. Yeah,
And that was the one where I'm sorry, not Kotaku. That's the one where Bethesda was like, "Hey, this issue has been resolved. Sorry," right? Like, and they didn't give much more of a response outside of that.
Yes. And Luke Plunkett had to write the article on this as well on Kotaku. Bethesda support leaks Fallout 76 customer names, addresses, and phone numbers. And he ended the article with, quote, "I can't believe this game and now its support is such a mess that I've had to write 3 stories about a plastic bag," end quote. And after that whole controversy died down a little bit, Fallout, there was another thing that happened where Fallout 76 players noticed that there were lots of little changes made that were not communicated with this most recent patch. And none of them were like huge things. In fact, they're things that you would kind of expect Bethesda to be patching up, but they did negate some things that players were taking advantage of. And it would have been fine if Bethesda had held to their promise and been transparent about what they were doing, but in spite of their promises of transparency, they were not. And so the Fallout 76 drama continues to rage on.
Yeah, and I wasn't on here last week, so I didn't get a chance to really talk about a lot of this, and I don't want to rehash everything, but I do want to point out that I felt like the Fallout 76 patch stuff is a little nitpicky, you know, like you said, a lot of the changes are just common changes to in-game markets and stuff like that, and yeah, they need to be more transparent, and they're promising more transparency. A lot of these updates were probably in the pipeline before some of this change of heart was taking place, and so to go back and kind of retrofit a patch notes kind of after the fact probably would have been long. But I mean, look, VG247 probably getting some mad clicks off of just continuing to shit on Bethesda, so because that's what everybody wants right now. I cannot think of a farther and harder fall from grace than what we've seen with Bethesda over the last month and a half.
Yeah, it's worse than Bungie with Destiny. I would argue at this point we're at a way worse state than Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah,
it's been bad.
Yeah, Anyway, we shall see. Maybe one day we can kind of step back and look at everything that went wrong with Fallout 76. I hope you guys appreciated the titles of the last two weeks of episodes. 2 weeks ago, what's wrong with Fallout 76? Last week, seriously, what's wrong with Fallout 76? Because I mean, it does just feel like the hits keep on coming, and a lot of it are just unforced errors by Bethesda. So
Definitely.
all right, guys. Well, let's not talk about Bethesda, except for my topic. Let's talk about The Outer Worlds, which is kind of somewhat related to Bethesda and Fallout. So, The Outer Worlds actually got announced. Let me get this open and hope that my internet doesn't go crazy. And of course, it's got an autoplay video on it. So The Outer Worlds got announced at the Game Awards 2018, which was going to be my topic last week, predicting all those award winners. But and I think this is the announcement that kind of caught my interest the most, because this is Obsidian's new game. And just to clarify some things off the top, yes, Microsoft purchased Obsidian, but The Outer Worlds is not going to be an Xbox exclusive. And in fact, I don't think Microsoft is publishing this game. Is that correct?
They aren't. It's Take-Two's private division.
That's right. Because they had already bought the rights to Obsidian's next game, which is this. Mm-hmm. So essentially, this is kind of a spiritual successor. I think that's a fair term for it, to the Fallout games. And it's being created by the people who made the original Fallout and Fallout New Vegas,
which they proudly proclaimed in the trailer.
Yeah. And if you get a chance to watch the trailer, it definitely puts off not just vibes. Like, vibes seems too mild a word, you know? Like, rip-off's too strong of a word. So somewhere in between vibes and rip-off, it's just like, it feels so Fallout in what it is, but it takes place in like this faraway galaxy where corporations kind of rule everything, and corporations are kind of the factions of this game. And people like pledge their allegiance and find their identity in corporations. So it's very dystopian in that sense. And so I kind of want to talk not just about The Outer Worlds in and of itself, but just like kind of where this announcement falls and how, like, is this a good time for this announcement because of where we are with Fallout and with Bethesda right now, and then just kind of broaden the scope out to spiritual successors and creators who've gone on to create something in a similar vein to the thing that helped them get popular. So let's just kind of start with what we thought about this game announcement and if this is something you're excited to play.
Yes, I'm very excited about it. I love dystopian stuff. And like you said, it just looks so much like Fallout, and I enjoy Fallout. So having one that's not broken, that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, out of all the announcements of the Game Awards, which felt to me a little bit hollower this year in terms of the announcements that were made, but this one definitely stood out. They're definitely positioning it as filling that gap in a lot of gamers' collective hearts right now. Obviously, this has been in development for about two or 3 years, so this was all before the Bethesda Fallout, pun very much intended. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think this is a team that has a very, very strong background in RPGs and in that Bethesda style RPGs. And so it's definitely, the world looks kind of a little bit less similar to Fallout and a little bit kind of between Fallout and the Borderlands series, which that sounds super exciting to me. And there was a bunch of gameplay trailers and like extended looks that were sent, I guess, published on GameSpot over the weekend. That looked great.
Yeah, and the more I read about this game, the more I liked it because it seems to really lean on a lot of those things that I've been saying over the last couple of weeks are the reason that I like Fallout games,
Yeah.
kind of that ever evolving world where my decisions really matter. You're kind of shaping the narrative with the things that you're doing and the people that you align yourselves with. And it kind of goes even further than that, into, I'm just going to kind of read a snippet of this article from GameSpot. It says, the Outer Worlds, we're told, keeps track of your interactions, mistakes, and tendencies. When the background computations identify that you've experienced a specific event repeatedly, it will give you a chance to incorporate that experience into your character's mental state. If, for example, you're attacked 5 times by a specific type of wild animal, the game will ask you if you'd like to accept a phobia of said creature. This opportunity is twofold. Accepting the phobia will result in a debuff of specific stats when you come near that species in the future, but by accepting it, you will get the chance to pick up an extra advantage too. I love stuff like that where your character kind of becomes a product of the world that you live in and the situations that you find yourself in. A lot of times in RPGs, I feel like I'm only experiencing slices of them because I have a tendency to really try to avoid certain types of missions while chasing after other kinds of missions. And I think that with this whole idea of like interactions and tendencies, the game will start to shape me based off of those kinds of side missions that I'm attracted to, those side quests. And so I do think there is a gap. And I think that even after Fallout 4, there felt like there was a gap. Like Fallout 4 didn't do the decision-based narrative stuff quite as cleanly as I believe past Fallout games had done. I felt at the end of Fallout 4, I felt like a lot of my decisions didn't matter. And so even without the Fallout 76 debacle, I think the Outer Worlds comes in at a time where people have really been aching for, people have been begging Obsidian to make a new Fallout game, and obviously they can't do that anymore. And so I think this is kind of their answer to that. And then this announcement coming in the wake of everything that has happened with Fallout 76, like, could you have asked for a better marketing situation than what's going on here? But I do want to bring up, I do want to ask this question. Is there a chance that a game can be too similar to its predecessor, to the thing that it's a spiritual successor of? I'm going to read another paragraph for you. It says, you dictate your character's growth by investing in a stat system with categories dictated by a 6-letter acronym not unlike Fallout's special system. Despite these and the many other similarities, the Outer Worlds isn't devoid of originality. Kane smirked before saying that he couldn't tell us what the stat acronym in the Outer Worlds is, but he was amped to share the other side of character customization. That's when they get into the interactions and tendencies. And so you're going to have this same like character customization model based around an this like acronym. And so I do want to get you guys' opinion. Is there a chance that a game can be too similar to the game that it's kind of coming out on the heels of or is inspired by?
I think it can be, but this is just such a unique situation because the similarity is coming not because they're ripping something off or drawing inspiration from something, but like Fallout came from these guys. And when like people who are creative, they we hope to see like new and different things out of them, but there's always like, you can tell when something came from the same creative person, like when you're watching a Tarantino movie or when you're looking at a Van Gogh painting. And I feel like that's more of what's happening here. Like these guys were instrumental in creating Fallout, and I kind of expect things to be really similar, just because that's the sort of thing that they're going to create.
I do think that, I would agree. I think there can definitely be a case where a game is far too similar or ripping off another series or a specific game. And I think there are certainly systems in this game that are remarkably similar, if not the exact same as in either past Fallout games or past RPGs of this kind. But I also think we haven't, I would tend to reserve judgment until we've seen more. Like that phobia system sounds super interesting to me, and that's not something we've seen before. They also sit in the preview coverage by GameSpot. They also said they're pulling, and this is something that really sparked my interest. They're pulling some stuff from BioWare games, specifically kind of the loyalty mission and the missions and the way you build relationships in the Mass Effect games, which is another series that obviously fell off, and there's a gaping hole in a lot of gamers' hearts for that kind of game as well. So I do. I mean, obviously, it's similar to the Fallout games, and I would be unsurprised if they don't cop to a certain amount of that in the development, because I mean, not only are they obviously the creators of Fallout and Fallout New Vegas, they're probably just huge fans of that series. Yeah, I think there's certainly a point where I think the two opposites or the two poles you used were spiritual successor and ripoff. And for me, currently, it's sitting somewhere in between, and that's perfectly fine for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a spectrum, and I don't want to accuse this of being a ripoff. I mean, we just saw it, so that's not the intention of what I'm doing here. I do think you reach a point where you kind of do yourself a disservice as a creative type when you start to kind of tie your horse a little too tightly to the thing in the past, because right out of the gate you become compared to Fallout, and that's been the conversation that's surrounded the Outer Worlds, and that's kind of the framework of this GameSpot article. Even is just like tying this new game so tightly to the old Fallout experience, the Fallout New Vegas experience especially. And I do think, as a creative person, you can kind of cross a frustrating threshold where anytime your game is mentioned, it's mentioned alongside this other game. And it's not standing as its own thing. It's standing in comparison to something throughout its entire existence. And so I just, if I was a game creator and I was made popular by a specific game that I made, while I would definitely continue to take inspiration from that, I would avoid certain things that really tie me back. And to me, just like hey, we're going to have a stat system based around this acronym, that's one of those things I would personally try to avoid, because the comparison is far too one-to-one there.
I keep arguing back and forth on whether I feel like that particular aspect is a fair comparison or not, just because strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, those have always been a part of RPGs from tabletop D&D. The only thing it's swapped out is Constitution becomes luck, because you can't roll a die. You can't roll dice in the games, but I do. But then I argue on the other side. Well, they've chosen to arrange it in an acronym as well. But then that just makes it memorable. Like I said, I can argue back and forth on it. But I think you're right. That's not the only thing that's comparable for sure. And right now, it's pretty beneficial for them to be compared to Fallout, right? But had Fallout 76 done really well, they'd run the risk of being overshadowed for sure.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, to what you're saying, Luke, there's definitely a risk as a creative team of kind of resting on your laurels and kind of just repeating what you've done and it getting stale. I personally don't think that's... Obsidian has a pretty diverse catalog of products they've put out. And even the games they're working on now, I would imagine the game they're working on for Microsoft is probably completely different than this. They're still porting and working on content for, what's that, old school? Is it Pillars of Eternity or something like that? I think I would be interested in talking to the devs about why they decided to pursue this project, other than obviously that they have the talent and the creativity they probably wanted to dive into a new world, but in a kind of a familiar framework. But I would also be interested in seeing if they just wanted to make it because they don't see any games like this anymore. and with Bethesda kind of clearly distancing itself from this style of game, at least at the current moment, I would be interested in asking if maybe that's why they were to pursue this.
Yeah, and I think the whole situation with the Fallout stuff, and I don't know the full story, but I do know that there was some creativity that was there was with Fallout 2, right? Correct me here. These are the creators of the original Fallout, and when Fallout 2 was in development, that went to a different team, correct? And went to a totally different style. So I also can get. Go ahead, Larry.
I think the article says they were behind Fallout 1 and 2, and they didn't switch until 3.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, 3 was a departure from the first.
Okay, that's
two,
right.
Because they weren't first-person shooters.
That's right. So I can also kind of see like a Dying Light, Dead Island situation thing going on here. You know, where a project that you kind of was kind of a passion project for you gets taken away or moves in a direction that you didn't necessarily want it to go in, and you kind of want to deliver on the original vision that you had for it. And here we are with Dying Light 2 about to come out before we even get to see the next Dead Island game that was announced 2013, 2014. So I can definitely see that, but I also think I look at games like God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn, and these are games where their studios kind of were popularized, and the people behind them found their success in one genre or style of game, and then took a huge risk to kind of say we want to try something totally different, and found a lot of success there. And so, and I to me, I don't know which would be more satisfying, but I would think that like the team at Guerrilla would find it more satisfying to be like, man, we did a great job making Killzone games for years, and then we really knocked it out of the park with this third person open world, RPG. And so I just I'm excited about the game, but I just hate that right out of the gate it's like automatically let's tie this to Fallout, even more so than just it's made by the people who made New Vegas. But in that vein, I do want to ask, are there any examples of games like in a similar situation? And I'm talking more like spiritual successor realm, where maybe it's creators of the original game going and making something outside of that IP, but in a similar vein, or maybe it was somebody who took a game that inspired them a lot and they made a spiritual successor to it that you liked maybe even more than the original that came out.
I could not really think of any examples where I liked it better than the original. The one that like stood out to me, and it's the big obvious one, I guess, is Bungie moving on to do Destiny from Halo. And when you play Destiny, you can feel that these are the guys that made Halo. That like there's some similarities there, but it was a vastly different type of game. But although a lot of my not liking Destiny as much came down to like that just wasn't the type of game that I enjoy. But just looking at it, what it was for Bungie though, Bungie was definitely getting into the just doing the same thing over and over again kind of rhythm. Like Halo games they're predictable, right? They're going to follow the same pattern every time, all the way down to you got the big drive the vehicle really fast thing at the end of the game and a nice boss fight going on. And you even got that a little bit in Destiny too, didn't you? But but I think that change of pace was great for Bungie as a company. Moving on to something different gave them the ability to grow and flex and do things that they hadn't done before. And so even though I didn't like it better, I recognize that it was a good move for Bungie.
Yeah, it's harder for me. I guess it's harder for me to think of examples of like this, where the original developer is kind of recreating its own success or following a formula that it's set in the past. I guess it's probably a lot easier to find examples of other developers who purposefully either rip off or pay homage, like painfully obvious homage to other games. Like you could probably rattle off a list of Metroidvania games that have been like 1-to-1 copies of either Castlevania or Metroid games. That's when it kind of that for me is when it kind of passes off into the rip-off side of the spectrum. But yeah, it's harder for me to think of a case like this. There are definitely some out there. They're just not coming to me at the moment.
Yeah, I think the clearest example is, and I already mentioned it, is the Dying Light game, and and Larry, I think that one's probably one for you that you like. Did you like Dying Light more than you like Dead Island?
I didn't actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I love Dead Island. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's in my top 10 probably of all time.
Okay.
Like,
Wow.
if any of you got interested and you wanted to go back and play the first Dying Light, I'm down. Let me know when. I'm there.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the first Dead Island?
Yeah.
No, I get it confused in my head too. But yeah, I think all the ones that I can think of are kind of like you were saying, Cody, with stuff that was inspired by Metroidvanias, like Ori and the Blind Forest is a good example. Those aren't original creators, but they took this genre, this model of game. Axiom Verge is probably an even better example of that.
Yeah.
And so our struggle to come up with those games is what makes me worried for the Outer Worlds, that it's hard to think of these games that kind of stem from an original concept or formula, branching out into their own and then finding a similar level of success. Like, I think it.
Oh, actually, sorry, I just thought of a quick example. I guess this categorizes. I guess you could technically talk about Harmonix, the transition from Guitar Hero to Rock Band.
Yeah.
Activision took over Guitar Hero for a long time, but they shifted over to Rock Band and found, if not more success, just as much. But that's that. I think that's the outlier that's the exception to the rule.
And even within that, it was that's such a weird example, like, because at its core, it's the exact same thing,
Yeah.
And when Guitar Hero kind of branched out and tried to do something different with Guitar Hero, what was the new one called? Guitar Hero Live, or where they tried the like 3x3 button layout and all that sort of stuff. Like,
They tried to make it more like
they
playing
somewhat
guitar.
deviated from the formula and it bombed. And so, but with Rock Band, like, they just took the same formula and added in drums and a microphone and stuff. And so that's such a difficult example because that would be like, I can't even compare it to this example, but it would basically be like, hey, we're going to make a Fallout game, but we're going to add these two similar features into it as well. But yeah, and so I think what we're coming at here is just that it's so hard to be successful here, and I think it's hard to shake off the chains of your past, and because everybody is always going to view you through the lens. And so the comparison isn't like this broad, big picture across the board. Is this a really great RPG? The conversation's always going to be, is this better than Fallout? And I think from that, you start in kind of a disadvantaged position. And so as excited as I am to play this game, I think when it comes to like talking about its legacy, it's got a harder climb because it's always going to be compared to New Vegas or to any of the other Fallout games even. But it may be at an advantage because it's also going to be compared to Fallout 76, which is at the state it's at now.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Like, if Bethesda was doing really great with Fallout right now, like, I would be real worried about that. But Fallout 4 was kind of even a dip in popularity, and then follow that by the disaster, the train wreck that has been Fallout 76. And I think that it's going to work in a weird way to actually be advantageous. But they didn't know that Fallout 76 was going to bomb, and this was definitely a risky play because of the reason that you're stating.
definitely. All right. Well, that's all I've got to say about that. We have very little information to go off of about this game, and but I thought it would be a good chance to have a conversation about like spiritual successors. So, Larry,
What?
what's your topic?
Well, there's no doubt that this is the biggest gaming news in 10 years, but just kidding. But Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is coming in 2019. And I freaking love Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I can see that Cody feels the same as I do. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts. So, I mean, the article, I'm not really going to read much from it. We know that there's a Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 coming out. It's going to be exclusively developed for the Switch, so that's really interesting. We're going to have 4-player co-op and a new over-the-shoulder camera view. But before we get into this game, have you guys played previous Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, and what did you think?
I've never played a Marvel Ultimate Alliance game.
All right.
I think I played one of them at a friend's house once for like 15 minutes.
All right.
Cody's like, I think I saw a trailer for it in a GameStop back in 2011.
Yeah.
It's like my mom. That's the one with the superheroes, right? Nah, like they weren't pretty games, and they weren't like cutting edge gameplay. But wow, this conversation is not going to be great.
No.
I'm the only one who cares.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll watch the trailer and have some thoughts.
So my experience with this game, I was in college, I guess a freshman in college, sophomore in college when this game released. And my college did this really awesome for me, but also stupid thing where they took everybody, you fill out this like survey so they can pair you up with like a similar roommate. They took everyone who like stayed up late and played video games and threw us on the same hall. And it was just a gaming fest all the time. And so when this game came out, like there was always somebody around to play Marvel Ultimate Alliance with. And like I said, they weren't like graphically incredible. They were kind of like a light RPG. You could play this crazy cast of Marvel heroes. And you'd face off against all the villains. Even, well, that's not literally all, but you got some real obscure guys that you got to fight. And you could level up skills. You could try playing with different characters on your team, and you could unlock synergies that way. And so if you were a huge nerd and knew about all these obscure team-ups that had happened, you could figure out these team-ups a little more quickly. But it was just one of those fun games. You sit down in the same room with a few friends, and you play through this game and have fun together. It really reminded me of playing Gauntlet back in the day. And I know you've never played Gauntlet, Luke. Did you ever play Gauntlet, Cody? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what it felt like. It's like a hack and slash light RPG, and it was a blast. I loved that game so much. I beat it with my friends right after my wife and I got married. We played through it together. It's not a game that I would ever play by myself, never. But if I can find even one person to play it with me, I will go crazy with this game.
So these are paid games, right? Like they're not free to play.
No, they're not free to play.
Well, they look free to play. And I wasn't setting up a joke. I was legit asking because watching this trailer, it looked and felt like Disney Infinity in a lot of ways. Like really shallow mechanics. Like, yeah, we can have a huge cast of characters, but in terms of their abilities and stuff, they're all like 60% fleshed out. So it had this real like Disney Infinity vibe to it, and I think it's a smart play to put this on the Switch with the demographic of Switch's audience, and kind of I think that this seems like a great game to kind of pull out and play in quick little bursts, and I don't think it would find a ton of success on like Xbox One, PS4, especially when you have like Spider-Man on PS4, and like in comparison, this kind of feels like more like a mobile game. So I get the excitement over just like the quantity of Marvel characters that you can play with, because I've never played Marvel, but I do understand like the cast of characters is kind of outrageous. But I just think we're in a different time now, and these games, like, even if you have the license, it's going to be hard for it to find a lot of success.
Yeah, I think that is all very fair. It looks like a mobile game. And I think that those original games probably were in some way sort of inspiring to the Disney Infinity stuff, that kind of thing. Like bringing these guys from all these different worlds together. And yeah. And you're right, the mechanics are not complicated. It's a very simple, straightforward game. But that's the niche that it fits in. I throw this in the same box I throw like Mario Party. Like no one is hopping on to play Mario Party alone, right? But you got some friends over, they're interested in it too. You might throw it in the console. But you're right, we're in a different era. Couch co-op is basically dead. And I whined about that all the time on the Play 3 podcast as it was happening because I love couch co-op. And we talked about this a lot back in the day, but we're on a new podcast now, Luke. So rehash it with me and let's let Cody join in. Luke, why did my best friend couch co-op die? Why did it go away?
Well, let me get Cody in on this because I am interested in what he thinks like about couch co-op.
I don't think couch co-op is dead. I think it's being revived. I think particularly with the kind of the advent of Let's Plays and Twitch streaming, a lot of which revolves around people playing games together. I mean, there are entire Let's Play series that are just friends getting together and playing couch co-op games. Otherwise, I don't think Overcooked would exist. If it weren't for that, I don't think any number of games like Towerfall would exist. Without that, these are all obviously calling back to it, like the golden age of couch co-op. But I think we're seeing a small resurgence of that kind of game, especially on the Switch, it makes it so easy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I also pine for the days of couch co-op, but I've had so many great couch co-op experiences in the last few years because I think it is making a comeback in the indie space, at least, not in the AAA space.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that I think that death is felt more on the AAA level, and especially for a guy like you, Larry, like you kind of exist mainly in the AAA space. You don't play a ton of indies, and so when you talk about your couch co-op experiences, you're mainly talking about like Halo, split screen, and LAN parties, and that was also where you felt it the most was when Halo 5 announced that they weren't going to have couch co-op play. But I stem back to things that I said back in the Player 3 podcast. I think they just had data that was like, hey, we don't see this being utilized enough to justify us having to cut back resources and other things that we would want to do. Because essentially when you're running with your couch co-op and your gigantic worlds that they were creating on the PS4 and the Xbox One, the amount of resources it takes just to have one player in that world, one player's field of view, and one player's mechanic input and all that sort of stuff. Like in order to get another player in there would have had to been sacrifices that were made. However, they have announced, I believe, that they're putting back couch co-op into future Halo titles, right? I may be wrong there, but
I don't remember this. I hope you're right.
I don't remember hearing that.
Next time somebody starts talking, I'll look into that. But I'm pretty sure that they were like, we heard the feedback because that was the game that I think had the most backlash when it was removed. But I really just think it came down to heat mapping and understanding that this is a feature that a small percentage of people were actually leveraging for any kind of significant amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like single player in Call of Duty.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think Halo was an interesting one. So I think you're right on the graphical side of things. It took a lot of power to have two screens following two different characters. But with shooters in particular, there's a level of fairness when you're playing online competitively.
Mm-hmm.
If I can at a glance see what my teammates are doing and where they're at, it just makes it a lot easier to coordinate. and you could tell when you were playing against a team of people who were on the same TV versus a team of people in 3 different states or whatever, you know. So I definitely think that was part of it. So yeah, you know, I hadn't even thought about the indie space, and you're right. I don't play enough indie games, so yeah, it is kind of reviving, and I have felt the revival on the Switch in particular because that's the Switch's. I don't want to use the word gimmick because I don't think it's gimmicky necessarily, but like that's their thing. Like they want you to play together. And so this game's definitely going to fit in that space for sure.
So this is from Polygon back in February 2017. It says 343 Industries head Bonnie Ross said at this week's DICE Summit in Las Vegas that Halo FPS games will, quote, always have split screen going forward, end quote, calling the removal of the feature and the ensuing fan outcry a painful learning lesson for the studio.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow.
So yes, couch co-op is making a comeback in Halo games, and that was integral to the experience, probably more so than any other AAA game that I can think of. You know, people don't think of the outside of like GoldenEye, you know, before online play, but no other modern shooter can I think of that like couch co-op and split screen multiplayer was such a integral part to the experience.
Yeah, as you all learned 2 or 3 weeks ago, like there's still a group of guys I get together with and have Halo LAN parties, but we got to go all the way back to. You could use Halo 4, but we're usually playing Halo 3 for our LAN parties. We'll jump onto Reach sometimes. Yeah, and
I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think bringing up Nintendo is a good way to go, though.
Yeah.
I mean, not just like it's obviously home to a lot of family friendly and couch co-op friendly indie games, but also like they're still going hard on the Mario Party train. Mm-hmm. They're still going hard on Mario Tennis. Mario Kart obviously is in split screen now, but Super Smash Brothers just came out. That's a massive couch co-op. I mean, you can play online, but it's usually just a couch co-op tournament experience.
And they have split screen in Mario Kart. Yeah.
They do. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Luke gives me the beat down regularly in Mario Kart. I'm the worst Mario Kart player in the world.
That's saying something. Mario Kart is not that hard.
A 2-year-old who doesn't know what the controller does could beat me.
He had to drink a disgusting milkshake on a 12-hour live stream one time.
All right, let's go through this just briefly because listeners, I highly recommend that you play this game with your friends. We did this as part of a thing to raise money for somebody, but it was just a fun thing to do. So you have a Mario Kart tournament and you play. Is it called a circuit?
Yeah.
One set of tracks. So you play a circuit. Whoever wins the circuit adds an ingredient to the blender. And you play however many circuits, and at the end, you blend it up, and whoever lost the most has to drink the contents of the blender.
It was awesome. Larry took a sip of it and vomited everywhere. It was the perfect end to
touched my tongue, and I immediately puked.
That's amazing.
It had sardines in it and Dr. Pepper, and those were the two things that blended together that really ruined me.
Cody, when you move closer to us, we need to plan a weekend where we have like a long-ass stream where we all just get together and play video games for a long time.
Oh, 100%. I'll do that.
Right, awesome.
So anyway, I've digressed long enough.
Well, no, back to the point. Switch is interesting because you bring up all these games that are couch co-op, and I think it is definitely a niche of theirs. But also, like a ton of their marketing is about like, hey, everybody, bring your $300 console with you to my living room, and let's all play on our own screens. And honestly, I do think that's a reason that couch co-op has kind of gone by the wayside in modern gaming in a lot of ways, just because who wants to play with a screen divided? You know, like we all have these big, nice televisions. Like I'd rather play with my friends online than get together and have to divide my giant, beautiful TV into fourths and play on that. And then like I would take my Switch up to the business that I own, and we'd all play together on the Switch screen. You know, like, so we'd have like 4-player split screen on the tiny Switch screen playing Mario Kart. And so
that's brutal.
I understand it. the appeal of like, hey, let's all get our Switches together and all play on our own screens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I guess the idea of couch co-op is sort of different now because everybody has, I mean, just think about what Jackbox is. Everybody has a computer in their pocket. It's still technically, it's not co-op all the time, but it's a couch multiplayer based game. You just all happen to be looking at a different screen.
Yeah, and even in like, there's the like Sony PlayLink stuff. Like Hidden Agenda, those games where you have the PlayLink app and you can all make the decisions that are going on the screen. Like, those are just really fun experiences, and it's funny. Like, in a lot of ways, Nintendo has innovated yet again in the local multiplayer space because of the way that they've developed their console. Of like, it's these individual things, and we can connect on this local wireless network that we create. This ad hoc network. I don't know anything about technology and what it's called, but we'll connect to each other via like local Wi-Fi and be able to play with each other. And I think that's really cool. I've had a lot of fun experiences like getting in the same living room with friends, all playing Mario Kart on our own Switches, playing the Mario Karts.
The Mario Karts. And I did want to bring up one last reason for the decline of couch co-op, and I think that it's just for a long time we've had a lack of variety in games. Like it has been the era of the shooter, and although there were a lot of couch co-op shooters, I think couch co-op lends itself better to literally any other game style, side-scrolling beat 'em ups or hack and slash gauntlet games. Like I think those are just inherently better for couch
Fusion
co-op.
Frenzy, the greatest.
Minecraft.
Oh my god,
Gosh, I love Fusion Frenzy back in the day.
I do too.
So I think that was a factor in it. But okay, cool. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think I'm good.
Then we're moving on.
I like it.
Negatory.
So
Go ahead.
good. I was super. I'm
No,
lost.
you're
What?
good. Go ahead.
Okay. I was very surprised to see Team Ninja developing this game. Pleasantly
I think everyone
surprised.
was.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about that?
So who? You may not know
It's
this right off the
amazing.
top. Who developed the first two?
Gosh.
No, I
Not
know.
Team
Yeah, I know.
Ninja.
let me look that up while you tell people who Team Ninja is and what they've made.
All right, so if you don't know Team Ninja, you do know Team Ninja. They're responsible for the Dead or Alive series, Ninja Gaiden. So those of you who are gluttons for punishment, I know you've played Ninja Gaiden. Metroid Other M. That's another one that's kind of in their catalog that one of these things is not like the other in a lot of ways. Hyrule Warriors, and most recently Neo has been their big one. So yeah, and now they're going to do Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order.
So Raven Software was the developer who did the other ones.
Well, the other one,
sorry,
the
the
second
other
one was made by a different developer.
Really?
So this game just gets traded off each time.
Yeah, Raven Software doesn't even make their own games anymore. They collaborate with Infinity Ward on Call of Duty games. So let me look up who made the second one.
It was Vicarious Visions.
Okay, they were
Space
involved with the
and
first
Savage
one.
Entertainment.
From what it looks like. And again, this is another one that I believe now just works on other projects with other studios. So yeah, it's crazy that like this kind of I don't want to say niche game, but like this game that isn't that popular went to such a well-known studio. That's really crazy, especially after which I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but does Team Ninja have multiple development teams? I would have to imagine that they're not pulling like Neo's team off of the next Neo project to work on Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, right? Okay,
Yeah, they have
all right,
multiple
good.
teams.
That would
That would be absurd.
So yeah, I think that's a big grab, and I think that alone will get more people excited and into this game. But I just thought from the trailer, like, it didn't look much different than what I had seen of the last games.
Yeah. But with them developing it, I just that gave me some excitement because they've got such a well-known catalog. I was never a Dead or Alive fan. Like, I've played them before, but I'm not a big fighting game fan, and B, I dislike Dead or Alive for a plethora of reasons that I'm not going to get into. Ninja Gaiden, I did enjoy that game. And Hyrule Warriors, I never actually played, but had I owned a Wii U, that would have been a game I had. I watched a lot of that game. So I definitely think that although this is kind of an odd game for them, I think they'll do really well.
Well, and I think
it got me excited.
I think the Hyrule Warriors is the thing that we can kind of point to and kind of get a better sense of what this game is going to be like, because it is going to be more of like a beat 'em up, big crowd, like, hey, we're taking on 100 enemies at a time kind of deal. Like, that's the vibe I got from the trailer that I watched, which is different than the original ones, which I believe were more kind of like dungeon crawly.
Yeah, but they also had it was nonstop fighting through those dungeons. Yeah. This last question just assumed that at least one of you had played and would be excited. So I'll rephrase it to, do you have any interest in this third installment? And if so, what do you hope to see out of it?
Cody's answer of what he hopes to see is he's like, I hope I get to see another trailer for it when I'm just in a random GameStop one day.
Yeah. This was such a weird, I think this is like the first quote unquote big reveal at the Game Awards, which was a weird way to lead off.
But also
event.
indicative of what the rest of it set the tone for the rest of it.
Exactly. It was pretty representative. I don't like, I joked that I've only played it once, but it reminded me of the old X-Men arcade game.
Yeah, that's what I love about
Simpsons arcade game. Like, I do enjoy those games to just fuck around and kind of beat things out with my friends. So I don't want to say it's like these games are terrible, because I think there is a place for them. You can have a Marvel Spider-Man from Insomniac, and you can have this game in the same ecosystem. So I think, I don't know, there's definitely a place for it, and especially on the Switch, especially like a bunch of kids are going to be scrolling through the Switch marketplace, and they'll see a game with Marvel in the title, and they'll definitely get interested. And especially with the massive roster, I mean, that's the appeal of this. Just playing as your favorite heroes and beating shit up, which honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a particularly deep experience, but it doesn't have to be. That's what those old this is the old X-Men arcade game was for me. It was just a fun chance to get together with a bunch of friends, pass the time. Yeah.
And for me, it's like, there's honestly nothing this game could do that would make me interested in it. I'm glad it exists for those of you like Larry who are excited for it. But for me, it's just like, I agree with you, Cody. It'll find its audience, obviously. Anything with superheroes, and not just superheroes, but really, really big superheroes, it's going to find an audience. And I think this definitely appeals to a certain kind of crowd that the Switch is perfect for. And so I'm looking forward to this game for people who are looking forward to this game, but not for myself.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I'm obviously pumped for it, and what I hope to see out of it is the same, that feeling. Get together with friends, have fun, beating crap up. And I don't expect the story to be super deep, but I will say that if there's one thing I hope that Team Ninja brings to this franchise that it has not had is a little bit more depth to the storytelling. Because the Marvel Ultimate Alliance story has generally just been, how can we just cram as many villains into this as possible, which is kind of what they have to do. But it just lent itself to some. You were not playing that game to see what happened next in the story.
Yeah.
and I don't expect it to improve dramatically, but I would like to see a little more complexity than this franchise has typically offered. But if they don't give me that, I'll still play it.
All right, Codsworth, lay it on us.
Yeah. So the I guess the past two topics have been somewhat related to the Game Awards. Obviously, a lot of stuff came out of that, and this is also, I guess, tangentially associated with Game Awards. Anyone who watched the presentation probably noticed that Epic's name and tag kept on popping up all over the place. And for me, this is probably the biggest story to come out of the Game Awards. They had announced prior and then finally launched on the day of the Game Awards the Epic Games, what is it called officially? The Epic Games Store, which is their new digital storefront. It launched during the Game Awards, and its focus is on primarily indie titles. It's fair to say. I think the only really major AAA developer currently with a title expected to launch on it is THQ Nordic with Darksiders 3, which isn't a massive game, but it is the largest game currently announced to be launching on it. This comes out at an interesting time, obviously. And we'll be talking a lot about what this means for Valve and for Steam, primarily because Valve made a bunch of announcements recently about it changing its policies in terms of royalties for developers and the profit cut with developers. Valve set the industry standard at kind of 70-30. Developers get 70% of the revenue from the money from the games that they make, and Steam will take away 30% of that. Epic is offering something a little bit more in the favor of devs, which is an 88-12 split, which is pretty sizable, especially for indie devs, which is who they're trying to court. There are currently a number of games announced for it. Hades, Supergiant's new game, which was the most exciting news for me coming out of the Game Awards. That is currently on its early access, launched on the Epic Games Store. There are a number of other studios that actually either delayed the launch of their game on Steam or just canceled it outright on Steam to launch on Epic instead. This information is per Games Industry Biz. I'm trying to look quickly here, but Coffee Stain Studios, their kind of first-person building game Satisfactory will be heading to the Epic Games Store. There's a game called Ashen, which is kind of a Dark Souls-y kind of game that's heading to the Epic Games Store. A lot of these will be releasing on Steam as well, but many of them are coming out first on Epic exclusively or kind of day and date with Epic and consoles. And so this is obviously a huge move. I guess the one other thing I wanted to mention was that there is Epic is offering an opportunity for devs to partner with content creators, the devs that kind of get their games on the Epic Games Store. It's called a supporter creator program. They haven't really kind of expanded on how that will look, but that is something to keep in mind. But basically, I did want this conversation to revolve around the one big question, which is, what does this mean for Steam? We can talk about what this means for Epic as well, but I think the question a lot of people are asking themselves is, what does this mean for Steam and what does this mean for Valve?
Yeah. I think Valve has existed for quite a long time being the top dog in PC game marketplaces, and obviously other ones exist, but they aren't built on a giant war chest of money like Steam is. And I think Epic does provide a unique opportunity to build a formidable competitor because Epic has a war chest of money as well. I think a lot of times we forget with Epic that they're more than just, Fortnite, that they also license Unreal, which is interesting in some of the games that are announced here for that are coming to their storefront. So and I haven't dug into all of the terms here, so yeah, they have this different profit share, but does that include, so like Darksiders 3 is built on Unreal Engine, right? And so they've licensed that out. So regardless of the platform it's sold on, Epic gets a cut of those sales because that's the way an Unreal Engine license works, is that rather than paying for Unreal Engine up front to be able to use it, it's a free to use tool that then you pay Epic a share of all of your sales. So is it you get 88% minus whatever cut if you built it on Unreal. So it's kind of a smart play from Epic because it's still a better deal because Epic would get that same cut even if you went over to Steam and sold it and it was a 70-30 split. Epic gets the same amount from you. So it's a way to like play around with the numbers, make it more attractive for developers to come and developers and publishers to sell their game on your platform, but also kind of, I don't want to say fudging the numbers either, but you get to double dip on some of these games. And I would imagine if we dug into the engine a lot of these other games are built on, we'd start to see that a lot of these games are built on Unreal as well, because it creates a kind of unique partnership there to launch your platform off of. But I do hope it starts to kind of move the needle in terms of what that industry standard of cost division is. I think it is expensive to maintain a storefront like that. And what I hope it does is push Valve back more into the game development world too, to be able to remain to be able to remain competitive in the storefront, supplementing cash by unleashing their studios to create games again.
Sorry. Yeah. I agree with all that. It kind of reminds me of what's going on with Netflix right now. I read some financial articles that I don't pretend to fully understand because I'm not a financially minded fellow. But I read an article early today about how Netflix has basically followed the typical timeline of a disruptor. Right, you came in with this disruptive service, your shares just skyrocket, and now they're going to drop pretty significantly. And that's not to say Netflix is about to fail or anything like that. It's just being constantly growing, uber successful. Like it's not sustainable. Eventually, you're going to have competition, and now we have all these other streaming services springing up. And ultimately, I think it will be good for Netflix. It'll force them to be a little more competitive. Like anytime there's diversity in a market, I think it's generally a good thing. But then there are challenges for the consumer of some games are on this storefront, some games are on that storefront. With Netflix, something like that, you're paying for a streaming service, and that makes it more challenging to the consumer. But with Steam, there's no cost to be a part of Steam. Is there going to be a cost to be a part of Epic Games Store? I didn't see that there was.
No, you just pay for the games. It's similar to Steam in that way.
So I think it's different from what we're seeing in video streaming then, because for the consumer, there's going to be nothing but benefit. Like the companies will be forced to be competitive, and you don't have to chuck your money in and be only loyal to a particular party. So I think in the end, it's going to be a good thing. I don't think it'll destroy Steam. I think we'll just see a couple of studios that have some good competition and force each other to adapt. Or at least that's my optimistic hope for how this all plays out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think a lot has been written about Valve and Steam recently. And I do think this will provide a space for a lot of indie devs who feel like they've been pushed either off of Steam or away from Steam. Valve just announced that like there are now tiers of kind of cost splitting or profit splitting as you earn more money. Like at the 25 million and the 50 million mark, the split gets more favorable for the developer, which those numbers are just purely outrageous for most indie devs. Mm-hmm. So many felt slighted by it for obvious reasons. But I do think we complain about on Steam all the time the issue of visibility. And I think it takes someone like Epic to kind of leverage their what did you call it? Their massive chest of
Their
money.
war chest, yes.
Their war chest. I like that. It takes someone like Epic to leverage that to provide a lot of indie devs like this the visibility to actually get their games seen. And obviously there will probably be the same wave that happened with Steam. It'll probably become very crowded now. I'll be interested to see how they curate which games get on the storefront. But right now, I think it's definitely, I can see the definite benefit for indie games and indie devs. I also think it'll be interesting to see. I don't think Steam is going anywhere. It's obviously still the largest and most successful digital storefront out there. But we have seen a lot of major AAA publishers and devs starting their own storefront, like Blizzard Activision obviously has the
Battle.net,
BlizzNet or whatever the fuck it's called. Ubisoft has its own thing. EA has its own thing to varying degrees of success. Not most people don't use those, and a lot of those games are still available on Steam. But you have seen major publishers pulling away from Steam, and now to see some indie devs pulling away from Steam, it does kind of raise a few eyebrows. But I ultimately agree with you, Larry. I think it'll be good for consumers, and it'll be good for developers and publishers and the managers of these digital storefronts to have a little.
The
stiff
curation and the
competition.
visibility thing is going to be kind of interesting, though, especially given the conflict of interest isn't the right word, but the idea that is Epic going to give preferential treatment to games that are made on Unreal because of that split and that share, you know? Does it kind of sour it in that sense? It'll be interesting to see it. I do think there has to be some sort of curation catch given the profit share split, or else everyone would be running to go to this right now. So there's got to be some caveats in the background that are going on. I imagine one of those caveats is a preferential treatment to games being developed on Unreal Engine. But even outside of that, I would like to think that in the beginning stages, Epic is trying to create more of a walled garden of content and saying, we're not going to allow certain things. But that's also something that's kind of gotten Steam into a little bit of hot water with some of the public as well. Them trying to cut back on games that they're allowing through, more based on the content rather than the quality. And that's a totally different conversation in and of itself. But the curation aspect of it is going to be difficult because I imagine with these numbers being announced, people are beating down the doors to try to get on this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Larry, you brought up kind of the I guess the Netflix comparison and the idea of kind of, I guess, oversaturation of a market is probably the best way to put it. And I think we've talked about on this show before what cloud streaming will mean for games and gaming storefronts, and how everybody's shifting to cloud. Will that be kind of a what we're seeing now with everybody shifting away from cable and towards streaming services? Is it just going to be the same old thing? I do wonder. Obviously, I mentioned a couple of the other large publishers that have their own storefronts, and this might not even be an applicable question. But are there too many storefronts? Are there too many? Is it kind of cordoned off into too many different services? Some of the services I mentioned, you do pay a subscription fee for. Steam and Epic are not two that you do pay for, but some do kind of put up paywalls behind this stuff. Do you think there are too many of these services, and will we just see kind of a repeat of the shift from cable to Netflix, except in the gaming space?
I think that it can become anti-consumer just in the sense of it becoming confusing in the buying experience, because the more staunch competition exists, the more differentiation you want to create between you and your competitors. And so I think we will start to see more like, hey, this is Steam exclusive, or this is Epic exclusive, or even if it's only for short amounts of time, but to say like, hey, if you want to buy this title that you're looking forward to, you have to buy it on the Epic storefront. And then I think you'll also start to see a rubber band effect for, your EAs and your Ubisoft saying, if you want to buy this game for PC for the first 2 weeks, you have to buy it through Ubisoft or the Origin store. or whatever EA's is called or whatever. And then it just creates a confusing experience for the customer of like, where do I go in order to get this thing? It may not be that I have to pay to gain access to it, but it's like the whole, there's a pre-order bonus for getting this at Walmart or for getting this at GameStop. And it's like, is that going to start to get created in this digital space as well? Maybe it's not even access to the game itself, but access to content within the game behind what storefront you pay for it. And I just hate that stuff. Like, that's something I hope to see less of in the future. And I think the more diversified storefronts get, the more of that we're gonna see in the digital space as well.
Yeah, it's another barrier, I guess.
Yeah, I do think that is a concern. In general, though, for me, it comes down to two factors. One is there a cost to using the service? Because at that point, you've got to have some loyalty, and you got to pick which services you're loyal to. Because most of us can't afford to be members of every single storefront, right? If it gets to the point where they're all paid storefronts. And then the other one is, where does the game exist? Do I download and own it, or am I streaming it from this service's cloud? And I think obviously we're moving toward a streaming things from cloud kind of world. And once we get there, I think a diversity of storefronts does become an issue. Now, which service did I have this game stored on? Like, I think that becomes a problem as well. In the current situation where you got Steam and you've got Epic and you can download from them, and the game is on my computer even if I can't access those services anymore, I think it's fine. But there are a lot of potential issues down the road for sure.
Yeah, I think there is a question of once accessibility becomes a bit of it's not even a problem. It's just kind of a burden on people. I have that right now with all the streaming services that I'm subscribed to or that I have for free. Like, I don't know if I can watch this show on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu. It becomes a little bit confusing. You're right, Luke. Yeah, I think it's annoying just with pre-order bonuses alone, let alone with actually getting the games themselves. So I think it'll be interesting, especially as we move into a cloud computing and cloud streaming future. How it would be kind of like if we had. I'm trying to think of the right metaphor. But if we had like streaming before, I'm not going to even bother going on this run. I'm just going to confuse myself and my mind will go into the cloud. But yeah, I definitely do think it can be an issue. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on this topic. I just kind of wanted to address it because I think it is, at least for me, it was the biggest thing to come out of the Game Awards show that didn't really have much to begin with this year.
All right. Well, let's move on, guys, to everybody's favorite game we play at the end of this show. There are too many games, but this isn't one of them. Remind you guys how this works because it's been a couple weeks. I have a list of 4 games here and their descriptions. 3 of them are real. 1 of them is fake. The guys are tasked with sussing out the one that is fake. To remind you guys of the score, Larry and Cody tied up at 3. And I have 5 points. I have X here. That's not 5. That's 10. There we go. All right, guys. You ready to play this week? All right.
I guess so.
Game number
Let's do
1.
it.
Sun. Sun takes place in the most well-known forest in the world, Clarencaster. The 300,000-acre forest located in southern Pennsylvania is full of plant life, beauty, and mystery. In the most southern base of the iconic Pennsylvania forest lays an area that has given Clarencaster the title of the most dangerous area in the world, south of nowhere. Game number 2. Solar Flux. Travel across the universe and save dying suns from extinction in this unique and challenging puzzle strategy game. You are the last hope to bring salvation to a perishing universe as you collect and deliver fragments of plasma using your omnidirectional ship. 3. Battle Princess Madeline. You're the princess, Battle Princess Madeline, to be precise, in this pixel-perfect retro side-scroller as you set off to defeat evil with your ghostly canine companion, Fritzy. Do you have what it takes to save your family, avenge your furry friend, and become the ultimate battle princess? Number 4, Where You Are, I Am. Long-distance relationships present a unique set of challenges. In this emotionally charged text adventure, live through the intense emotions of living hundreds of miles away from the one. All right, guys, so your 4 options this week: Sun, Solar Flux, Battle Princess Madeline, and Where You Are, I Am. Larry, we'll start with you. What is your guess?
I just really hope this game isn't real. So, Where You Are, I Am. In my understanding, the gameplay of this game is you're sending text messages to someone in a long-distance relationship.
It is an emotionally charged
right.
text adventure.
Please don't be real. That is my pick.
All right, Codsworth.
That sounds great to me. I'm not gonna lie. There are a lot of games like that, and I always love them. What, the first one, do you spell it S-O-N or S-U-N?
South of Nowhere.
South of Nowhere. I really hope it is real, but I'll go with the last one as well. I know it's not. It won't make the game interesting.
You guys are both correct. That one is made up. Which, well,
Thank God.
Actually, there are a lot of like text-based games like that and kind of relationship
Really?
simulators, especially on mobile, like where you kind of make decisions about your relationship. So
I guess I shouldn't judge other people's gaming preferences. I find real life people stressful enough without adding fake relationships with people. Into
also,
this.
so Sun sounds awesome. I actually meant to have the rest of this pulled up. So essentially, this is based off of an actual like iconic myth in southern Pennsylvania, where like 24 kids go missing in the woods, and you're set to investigate. It's kind of like a found footage horror game. It comes out on PS4 this week, so I think I may actually buy that and play it. So I should stream.
You should stream that.
I might do that.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys,
I'll
who are
watch.
you? Where can we find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week, Larry? Who are you?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at Larry Hunts Zombies. And I'll be tweeting about Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and I guess I'll be allowed.
Cody.
I am Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. I will probably be tweeting more about that weird-ass Sonic poster.
Who's voicing Sonic? It's someone really strange.
It's the dude from
That's
Parks
right,
and Rec.
that's
The guy
right,
who plays
that's
John Ralphio.
But, like, on the surface, that sounds awful. But when I think about Sonic's voice and I think about his voice, I'm like,
I'm
that could
technically
work.
homeless. I am Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at TK from Antioch and at Tales from Gold, which is actually growing really well. Which is my Twitter account where I make fun of playing Overwatch with people who don't know how to play Overwatch. So
it gives voice to the frustrations of many people.
This week, I think I'm just going to be tweeting about. So emails started going out today for Player vs. All's first issue, and then probably going to be making some announcements on Twitter in the next week about what that issue is going to be. So I am very excited about it. Big things coming in January, so get ready for that. This has been episode 20 of PVA Radio. Find us on podcast services everywhere. YouTube.com, just search PVA Radio. We'll pop up. Twitch.tv/PVA Radio. Maybe I'll stream some Sun this week if it's not ridiculously priced. I don't know how much it's going to be, but I really want to play it. So until next week, guys, thanks for tuning in. We love you.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Can I tell you the definition of insanity?
Music on that shortwave radio.